Boxing was built on the idea of greatness, on legendary names and immortal battles, on men whose legacy outlived time itself. Sadly, today's sport has lost much of that grandeur. Its glory has been buried beneath cheap spectacle. It now produces ordinary champions whose names are forgotten before the crowd has even left the arena. But somewhere in the archives of another era, priceless relics still lie in waiting. Exploring boxing history is like uncovering the ruins of a lost civilization. To find true greatness, you have to dig deeper. The man you're about to meet fought more professional bouts and won more fights than Muhammad Ali, Rocky Marciano, Mike Tyson, and Alexander Usyk combined. They called him the Old Mongoose.
I'm Archie Moore. I am a fighter.
At first glance, black and white footage from boxing's past can make the sport seem primitive. In some ways, that's true. Boxing is an ancient sport that has undergone a long evolution. But the most important part of that history is almost invisible to the naked eye. The greatest changes didn't happen inside the ring, they happened outside of it. A fighter's preparation has become more sophisticated and more precise. Today's elite boxer is the product of an entire team of specialists. Physiotherapists, nutritionists, psychologists, analysts, and physicians. Modern sports science has also found new ways to push athletic performance to another level. Today, an elite boxer may spend months in training camp preparing for a single fight each year. But that doesn't mean modern fighters represent the pinnacle of boxing's evolution. Long before the age of sports science, there were men whose understanding of the ring and of their own bodies was decades ahead of their time. Archie Moore was one of them. Archibald Lee Wright was born on December 13, 1916, in Benoit, Mississippi. Archie was certain of both the date and place of his birth, although his mother, Lorena Wright, insisted he had actually been born 3 years earlier. Here's how the boxer himself explained the discrepancy.
Well, Don, if I would tell you the truth, I doubt whether you would even believe it. But I'll tell you this for sure. Nat Fletcher, the Ring's editor and owner, has stated for years that I am 46. Being born December 13, 1913. Now, he says that my mother told him. Well, I'm not one to argue with my mother. But if I was born in 1913, then I would have been 3 years old at the time of my birth, and certainly I should have known how old I am, right? Right.
In the 1990s, researchers examined U.S. government census records and uncovered evidence confirming that Archibald's account was the more accurate one. History, however, knows no boxer by the name of Archie Lee Wright. His father, Thomas, left the family at an early age, and Lorena moved Archie and his sister Rachel to St. Louis, where she placed them in the care of her brother, Cleveland Moore. In his autobiography, Archie spoke of his uncle with genuine admiration. He wrote that Cleveland was so athletic and remarkably strong that he inspired him to pursue sports. But his passion for boxing was born from someone else.
I heard a noise, but it was behind a fence. So I tipped over to the fence, and I peeked through the fence, and I could see 2 black men. Big, beautiful. They were beautifully built, and they had gloves on, and they were fighting it out. And the crowd was yelling and screaming. That was making a noise. The crowd was making a noise. I stood at the fence and I was just frozen to the fence. I didn't know nothing else from then on that I wanted to be one of those guys. I wanted to be a champion of the world. I wanted to be a fighter.
As it turned out, wanting to become a fighter and actually being one were two very different things. It took Archie some time to learn that lesson.
13 years old, I was going through a park, and some Italian boys were playing softball, and they knocked the softball way out in the street. And I was in the street coming home from school. I picked it up, and the guy ran up, the outfielder ran to me and said, throw it here. And I threw it way over the head, trying to throw the guy out at second base. And the guys got mad, and we got to fighting out there. And then I saw all the rest of the gang coming after me, and I cut out, and I was gone. And I said, I'm going to quit running one of these days, and I'm going to start fighting back. I said, no prize fighter runs.
In 1928, Cleveland Moore died, and a year later, the United States was plunged into the Great Depression. At 14, Archie fell in with a gang and survived by petty theft, eventually receiving a 3-year sentence. He served his time at the Missouri State Training School in Boonville. It was inside that institution that the young mongoose, who would one day become boxing's all-time knockout king, earned his very first stoppage victory. No, not in the ring. It came in a fight to defend his own honor. After spending nearly 2 years in Boonville, Archie was released for good behavior and went to work in forestry. Even then, Moore dreamed of becoming a boxer. In the United States, boxing was immensely popular within the black community. Racial segregation, of course, had reached the sport as well, but inside the ring, those boundaries were never quite as rigid. Because boxing is an individual sport. If a fighter had talent, someone was always willing to make money from it. In his autobiography, Archie recalled one of his amateur bouts. His opponent was a white boxer named Bill Richardson. The third man in the ring was Bill's own brother, serving as the referee. I knocked him down with a volley of head punches about 1 minute into round 1, but the referee said I had fouled him, and he gave his brother a rest to recover from the so-called foul. Every attack Archie launched was ruled a foul, so Moore decided he would throw nothing but punches to his opponent's head until he turned it into chopped meat. In the second round, I dropped him with a left hook that spun his head like a top, and he dropped to the canvas like 4 pounds of mashed potatoes. With his dear brother around, Bill didn't need any enemies. As Moore celebrated the victory, he heard someone at ringside shout, "For 2 cents, I'd be happy to shoot that Negro." That was the atmosphere in which Archibald's boxing journey began. In September 1935, just a few months before his 19th birthday, Archie Moore made his professional debut. It marked the beginning of a long journey through the world of boxing and the pursuit of a dream that for years seemed out of reach. Archie Moore is often remembered for sharing the ring with Rocky Marciano and Muhammad Ali, but those heavyweight fights are only the surface layer, concealing an older, far more valuable legacy. Moore began his career as a welterweight before spending many of his prime years in the middleweight division. He fought in an era where boxing alone wasn't enough to make a living. During the early years of his career, his purses ranged from just $20 to $100. The more often you'd fight, the more money you could earn. Archie boxed every month, sometimes every week, and not all of those fights ever made it into the official record. Between bouts, he worked as a dock laborer, a road construction worker, and a dishwasher on long-distance trains. The hardest jobs became his workouts.
Becoming a professional fighter, you had to have the body to go along with it. Mm-hmm. And so I began to develop my body at a tremendous rate of excessive hard work. Mm-hmm. I began to shovel gravel out of a ditch and throw them about 12 feet high into a truck, And I used to chop trees down to build up a tremendous forearm and muscles in the shoulders. And that added to the punching power.
In March 1938, Moore nearly lost his life in a car accident alongside his closest friend and manager, Felix Thurman. As he tried to crawl out of the overturned car, he severed an artery in his wrist and nearly bled to death. That summer, Archie was given his first real opportunity to make a name for himself against Johnny Bandit Romero, a veteran with 113 victories to his name. Moore lost to a close decision, but 2 months later, he stopped Romero in their rematch. This time, Romero hit the canvas 4 times before the fight was waved off. After the fight, Archie realized something painful. The doors to boxing's highest level were still closed to him. A partnership with the manager Jack Richardson took our hero to Australia, where he fought 7 times. The Mongoose defeated the continent's top middleweights, Fred Henneberry, and twice Ron Richards, who had recently beat future lightweight heavyweight champion Gus Lesnovich. During his tour of Australia and Oceania, Archie Moore discovered that even on the remote island of Samoa, people who knew nothing about boxing still knew who Joe Louis was. Yet, Moore himself wasn't even known in his hometown of St. Louis. It showed that there was more to the story than racial segregation alone. Joe Louis was the heavyweight champion, a division where black fighters faced even greater barriers to a title shot. Louis had turned professional just 1 year after Moore and was already world champion 3 years later. By the time Joe retired, Archie was still little more than an overlooked contender. Racism, however, was only part of the story. During the first half of the 20th century, boxing operated by the rules of the underworld and was controlled by men like Frankie Carbo and Blinky Palermo. The road to a championship ran through corrupt bookmakers and powerful promoters. Archie Moore refused to buy fame with his own integrity, and so for years he remained a forgotten contender.
And somehow or another, the doors to the title room was shut. And I was kept from fighting for the title because the people who shut the doors knew that I was an honest guy and I would not stoop to any chicanery in boxing.
Rather than compromise with the system, Archie devoted himself to becoming the very best fighter he could be. While training in the Megalong Valley, he met Aboriginal Australians. They could cross hundreds of miles of desert carrying nothing more than a small pouch of dried meat. Moore was astonished by their endurance. He became convinced the secret lay in their way of life and diet. Later, Archie developed a diet of his own. He would spend hours chewing meat, extracting the juices, while trying not to swallow anything unnecessary. He also drank vegetable broth, leaving the solids untouched. Whenever reporters asked about the secret behind his remarkable conditioning, Moore would simply smile. He understood that newspapers weren't looking for facts. They were looking for a good story. With a sly squint and his trademark grin, the Mongoose would tell them a tale about an Aboriginal Australian who had revealed the secret in exchange for an old red sweater. But his dietary experiments nearly cost him his life. Early in 1941, Archie Moore was struck by excruciating abdominal pain. He was rushed to the hospital with a perforated stomach ulcer. At the time, it was almost a death sentence. Archie survived, overcoming both peritonitis and the pneumonia that followed. He left the hospital weighing just 108 pounds, with a horrific hockey stick-shaped scar stretching across his abdomen. It seemed his boxing career was over. Newspapers wrote that he would never fight again, but the Mongoose refused to give up. Determined not to borrow money from his managers, he took a job as a night watchman, and before long, he was back in the gym.
4 days after Archie, who was working for me, he came into the office and brought with him his scrapbook. And this was the first time that I knew that Archie was a fighter. He had just won both the welterweight and middleweight championships in Australia. We reviewed the book, and after reviewing it, Archie was sitting on the opposite side of my desk, and the tears started to come down in his face. And he told me with the greatest determination, he said, "One day I will be a world's champion."
No fighter in boxing history has a story that mirrors the myth of Sisyphus more closely than Archie Moore's. According to Greek mythology, King Sisyphus was cunning and defiant, deceiving the gods more than once before being cursed for his arrogance. His punishment was to push an enormous boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down again and again. The myth of Sisyphus became a timeless symbol of endless struggle and an unreachable goal. In 1942, Archie Moore returned to the ring. He won 9 fights and fought Eddie Booker to a draw. After defeating Jack Chase twice, the Mongoose captured the California State Middleweight Championship. The ring recognized him as the world's best middleweight. Yet, another title opportunity never came. During the 1940s, there was little fairness in the middleweight division. The undisputed champion, Tony Zale, defended his titles exclusively against white challengers. As a result, Archie and the rest of boxing's black elite were left waiting indefinitely. They were, without exaggeration, some of the finest fighters of their era. Brilliant boxers who never received a world title shot. They became known as the Murderer's Row. Charley Burley, Holman Williams, Eddie Booker, Herbert Lewis Hardwick, better known as Coco Kid, Lloyd Marshall, Jack Chase, Aaron Wade, and Kevin Coolidge, better known as Bert Lytell. Archie Moore fought every one of them, and some of those rivalries evolved into long-running sagas. Against the Murderer's Row alone, he compiled a record of 10 wins, 3 draws, and 5 losses. Sadly, none of those legendary battles were ever preserved on film, and if any footage still exists, it remains locked away in private collections, unlikely ever to surface. Archie also defeated other dangerous contenders, including Marty Simmons, the twin brothers Shorty Hogue and Big Boy Hogue, Kenny LaSalle, and Curtis Shepard. Many of the fighters who managed to beat Moore eventually lost to him in a rematch. Oakland Billy Smith was one such example. Their first meeting ended in a draw, but Archie went on to defeat him 3 times straight, stopping him twice. There was only one fighter whose style remained an unsolved puzzle for the Mongoose. His name was Ezzard Charles. During the second half of the 1940s, Moore launched his campaign for the light heavyweight crown, only to stumble 3 times against the Cincinnati Cobra. Their first fight ended in a lopsided decision loss for Archie. In the rematch, he pushed Charles to the limit, but lost to a close decision after being knocked down in the 7th round by a body shot. Their third encounter proved even more heartbreaking. Archie came within inches of victory, but once again, the Cobra slipped away. In the 8th round, Moore had Charles badly hurt and closed in for the finish. Instead, he walked into several counterpunches and was knocked out by a crushing right cross. It may be difficult for modern audiences to grasp, but even 10 losses were hardly a career-ending stain for a talented fighter of that era. Boxing was measured by a different standard. From 1945 through 1951, Archie Moore never fell out of the light heavyweight division's top three. He waited year after year for champions Gus Lesnovich, then Freddie Mills, and later Joey Maxim to finally grant him a title shot. Archie even joked that Maxim would remain champion until he passed the belt down to his own son. Moore put together one of the most remarkable stretches of his career. He knocked out Alabama Kid twice, despite the veteran's record of more than 200 victories. He stopped top contender Charley Doc Williams 3 times, knocked out Leonard Morrow in their rematch, once again defeated Bert Lytell and Oakland Billy Smith, and earned multiple victories over the rising light heavyweight Harold Johnson. Just imagine his schedule: 13 bouts in 1949, followed by an astonishing 18 fights in 1951.
Ну и вот уже потрясен Слейд.
That is a single thought. Let's spin each other. There's a minute to go.
Campbell Davidson goes down.
But the more successful he became inside the ring, the more difficult his life grew outside of it. Archie was fighting 2 battles, one against the finest boxers of his era, and the other against the men who controlled the sport. After the death of Jimmy Johnson, Archie's career came under the control of Jimmy's brother, Charlie Johnson, a man with whom Moore never managed to find common ground. Despite being regarded as one of the world's best light heavyweights, Archie was paid humiliating purses of roughly $300 per fight. "I have no warm feelings towards managers," Archie once said. "If it weren't for them, fighters would all be millionaires." In 1949, when Archie tried to break free from his contract, Charlie Johnson responded by freezing him out of the boxing business. Around that time, Moore crossed paths with veteran boxing operator Jack Doc Kearns. If Don King had a predecessor, it was Kearns, a brilliant con man who first guided Jack Dempsey to the heavyweight championship, then later tried to steal his earnings. In 1989, the Los Angeles Times described Kearns as one of the great sports con men of the century. Kearns promised he would get Moore a shot at the title. That wasn't an impossible promise. Joey Maxim was his fighter. In return, he demanded that Archie sign with him if he became champion. Moore had little choice. By then, he had almost given up hope of ever getting his opportunity. And although Kearns pledged to make it happen, the title fight still didn't come easily. In 1951, Moore faced the great Jimmy Bivens for the 5th and final time. Years earlier, Bivens had been Archie's nightmare. In their first meeting in 1945, Jimmy thoroughly outclassed the Mongoose. After the 3rd knockout, Bivens even landed a punch while Moore was down on one knee. Archie was given time to recover, but he never truly regained his senses. Jimmy stopped him in the 6th round. Moore, however, would have the last word, defeating Bivens in 1947, 1948, and 49 to settle the score. Their 5th and final meeting was completely one-sided.
On the deck, he's getting up without a count, which may have gone to 2. George Walsh is now calling Dr. Nardiello into the ring. Bivens firing suddenly in the 9th round.
Even a victory as dominant as that changed nothing. Archie Moore's career had become the very definition of a Sisyphean struggle. But the Mongoose proved even more cunning. and even more stubborn than Sisyphus himself. One day, he would finally leave his boulder at the top of the mountain.
When a task is once begun, never leave it until it's done. If the labor is great or small, do it well or not at all.
Archie learned those simple lines as a boy. His Aunt Willie used to recite them often. At first glance, they're just a simple children's rhyme about hard work and perseverance. But when you look at Moore's life as a whole, it's hard to escape the feeling that those words had already foretold his destiny. Archibald was a man of remarkable versatility. He owned restaurants, operated a dairy farm, ran a produce market, performed a dance band, played the piano and several other musical instruments, and was an accomplished marksman. Later in his career, he would also venture into film and television. While other champions liked to talk about knocking people out, Archie preferred discussing music and almost anything else.
Now, Archie, have you learned anything from your flying? I understand you become quite a competent solo flyer up here.
Well, Ed, I took my plane up for the first time, and it was quite a thrill, taking off and landing, too, especially landing. And, of course, when I got up in the air, the plane started tipping around, and I asked George Weston, said, "What must I do, George?" He said, "Well, you up here, you're on your own." I saw he wasn't going to help me, so I had to maneuver the best I could.
The mongoose understood the power of words and was gifted as a storyteller. Realizing he could beat the system with his mind rather than his fists, he turned to journalism. Archie wrote dozens of letters, and with them, and the help of his friend, Bob Reese, published articles in a variety of newspapers and magazines. In doing so, he kept the pressure of both the public and the reigning champion, Joey Maxim.
You would write full, long-page letters to every writer, columnist, yourself, longhand, right?
I would write in longhand. I'd write 35 letters each night. Each night.
You were a one-man PR firm for yourself.
Well, I tried to. I tried to be, and I knew that was what it would take to get me the ink that I needed to get a fight, and I almost went blind.
Right.
On December 17th, 1952, after waiting 17 long years, Archie Moore finally got his chance. He had fought 161 official professional bouts before earning his first world title shot, the longest road to a championship fight in boxing history. Moore was 36 years old at the time, or 39 if his mother was to be believed. Even in today's era of advanced sports science and carefully managed careers, most fighters are well past their prime at that age. Archie probably was, too. If anything, that only makes what he accomplished even more extraordinary.
Checking on that sixth round for a low blow, but they did not take round 6. Neither man has been down.
Еще один удар с правой, и потом с левой.
Joey Maxim was nearly 6 years younger. Just 6 months earlier, he had defeated the great Ray Robinson and entered the fight as the favorite. But the crafty mongoose approached the contest with a brilliant strategy. Despite his nickname, he fought less like a mongoose and more like a boa constrictor. He slowly wore Maxim down in close quarters until there was nothing left. Archie Moore was the new light heavyweight champion of the world.
76-74 на записке у рефери.
The new light heavyweight champion of the world, Archie Moore, after 36 years.
One remarkable detail is often overlooked. Shortly before the fight, Archie Moore hired a private investigator to find his father, Thomas Wright. On the night of the championship bout, he seated both his father and his mother together at ringside. I knew there was little chance they would ever reconcile, but I wanted my father and mother to watch me win the title together. I wanted to look down from the ring and see them standing side by side, and that's exactly what I did. As it turned out, Archie Moore had paid for his opportunity with more than just patience. Everyone profited from the biggest night of his career, except the new champion himself.
Joey Maxim demanded $100,000 for me to fight him for the championship. And I, somehow or another, got people involved into it to raise this type of money. And when the deal was finally finished, I had won the title. And with the encouragement of a president named Perón over in Argentina, I won the title. And I received $800 for my end of the purse. Maxim had his $100,000, but I had the title. I had something now to reach the world with. I had the modus operandi with which to perform.
Jack Kearns had structured the contract so that Moore was forbidden from defending his titles until he had given Joey Maxim 2 rematches. Fortunately, patience was one thing the Mongoose never lacked. In 1953 and 1954, he defeated the former champion once again, finally fulfilling his obligations to the greedy businessmen.
A 65 favorite. Should Maxim win, he'll be the first light heavyweight champion to ever regain a lost championship. A hard right pickup. His usually effective left jab is involving Archie and all. Moore grips Maxim with a left now. Moore, who is 37 years old, appears in remarkable condition.
His third defense of the undisputed light heavyweight championship came against a future Hall of Famer. By then, Moore had earned the nickname the Old Mongoose. It was the 5th meeting between Archie and Harold Johnson, with the Old Mongoose holding a 3-1 advantage in their rivalry. Yet, it was their final encounter that proved to be the fiercest of them all, and the only one preserved on film.
You'd better do something, Harold. Moore's jabs are setting up a right. Look at him. You've got him, Archie. There. Great right hand. Archie, hit him now. Johnson's shot. Watch him, Goldstein. That's right. Look at Moore. He had to pull it out or he was through. He did. He won it. A real pro.
Longevity is one of the defining measures of a boxer's legacy. It has always been valued in every era. But during the first half of the 20th century, it was a rare gift, and Archie Moore possessed it in abundance. The Old Mongoose remains the most efficient knockout artist in boxing history, yet punching power was never his greatest weapon. He once said, "You're always learning, and that's what keeps it fascinating. No matter how long you've been boxing, the mystery keeps revealing itself. You'll never fully solve it, and you never want to stop trying." That philosophy shaped his style into something unusual, an incredibly durable fighting system. Its foundations were laid by Moore's first trainer, Monroe Muncie Harrison. He was never a great fighter himself, but he taught Archie elements of his old cross-arm guard, known as the turtle shell defense or the armadillo defense. Moore's stance was instantly recognizable. His right forearm shielded the left side of his face while deflecting incoming punches. His left hand protected his liver. It's a demanding defensive style, often called an old man style. More than anything, it relies on intelligence, patience, and the economy of movement. In essence, it belongs to a fighter who understands that boxing isn't won by strength alone, but by intelligence and cunning. That's why Archie Moore became known as the Old Mongoose. As the years passed, and many of his rivals declined with age, losing speed and reflexes, Moore's style required almost no adjustment.
Loses no time, giving the Argentine fans a sample of his talent as he puts the challenger on the canvas in the first few seconds of the fight. His game, and they're at it again. Moving in with a deadly barrage of rights and lefts, Moore puts the final touch on Anzalone to win by a...
1955 was an unusually quiet year for Moore. A suspected heart condition limited him to just 2 fights, although both came against elite opposition. During that time, Archie was pursuing a shot at heavyweight champion Rocky Marciano. To prove he deserved it, he stepped into the ring with the division's top-ranked contender, Nino Valdez, a dangerous Cuban whom Marciano himself had avoided. Moore had beaten the towering Valdez 2 years earlier, and he did it again. At the time, boxing's biggest events were held in New York, Chicago, or Detroit. But the great con man Jack Kearns had another idea. He staged the fight in Las Vegas and even created a Nevada heavyweight title for the occasion. Moore versus Valdez became the first step in Las Vegas's rise as the new capital of world boxing. After another media campaign, Archie finally secured the super fight with Rocky. It was scheduled for September 1955, but first, he had unfinished business at light heavyweight. To remain the undisputed champion, he had to defend his title against Bobo Olson that June. Today, champions often surrender their belts in pursuit of bigger paydays. But no matter how important the Marciano fight was, Archie couldn't walk away from what had taken him a lifetime to earn. Carl Bobo Olson was the undisputed middleweight champion. For him, Archie was the final obstacle. Beat Moore, and he too could earn a shot at Marciano and a world title in a third weight class.
Do you think the boy at 168 or 70 pounds that's going to meet you will make any difference in your punching ability and boxing ability with a fast boy like Bobo Olson?
Well, Charlie Olson, being a natural light heavyweight, weighing 168, 170 pounds, has a bit of advantage in physical condition on me because I would have to come down from 196 to 175 pounds to meet him, which would therefore take some parts of my strength away from me.
Well, then the most important thing in your life, then, is the fight with Marciano.
That's right, definitely with Marciano. You see, I don't understand how they expect me to do all these incredible things, such as fighting a heavyweight weighing nearly 200 pounds 1 month, and the next month turn around and fight a middleweight. What do they want me to do?
Archie Moore drew on every lesson he had learned to shed nearly 22 pounds in just a few weeks. His secret diet returned, along with punishing workouts. The gym was turned into a makeshift steam room. Doors and windows were sealed shut. Dressed in a heavy rubber suit, Archie sparred, worked with the heavy bag, shadowboxed, and completed the rest of his training. The day before the weigh-in, he consumed nothing but half a lemon. Many experts believed the 26-year-old Bobo Olson had a real chance against the exhausted veteran.
Over a half a century ago. Now Moore gets Olson against the ropes, and Archie's quick hands and Olson is down. Bobo finally struggles to clear the cobweb.
Once again, Archie stunned the boxing world, stopping Olson in just 3 rounds. Years later, he would call it the greatest victory of his career. After successfully defending his light heavyweight crown, Moore began putting the weight back on for a showdown with the world's best heavyweight just 3 months later. By itself, it sounds like the kind of gamble no modern champion would ever take. But that's what boxing was like in another era. The great fighters didn't wait for perfect conditions.
Well inside, got Marciano's eye up. 10 seconds till the end of the round. Marciano.
Defeating Marciano would have been too much to ask, even for the Old Mongoose. Rocky was knocked down early, but by the 9th round, he had finally broken down the exhausted Moore.
Corridor, and the bull keeps coming. 10 seconds. Right hand. Right hand. Right hand. Oh, good right hand by Moore. Beauty. Just not the steam on it.
By all logic, Marciano should have been the one to send the old veteran into retirement. Instead, it was Rocky who hung up the gloves. Old Archie returned to the light heavyweight division, where one final chapter awaited him. Perhaps the most remarkable chapter of all. There is no greater opponent in the ring than time. It cannot be knocked out. It cannot be outboxed. And no fighter can avoid facing it. Sooner or later, it defeats everyone. By the second half of the 50s, Archie Moore was already losing that fight. But he was losing it in a way very few ever have. From 1956 to 1958, Moore compiled a record of 26 wins, just 1 loss and 1 draw. Still boxing around the world, he fought not only in the US, but also in Canada, Brazil, Germany, and Great Britain. During that run, he also defended his undisputed light heavyweight title against the 27-year-old Yolande Pompey. In November 1956, Archie moved back up to heavyweight to fight for the vacant world title after Rocky Marciano's retirement. The 21-year-old Floyd Patterson, the first great heavyweight of a new generation, was the only man to defeat him during those 2 years. But Moore's true legacy belonged to the light heavyweight division. Most fighters have little left to show by the end of their careers, especially after spending decades in the ring. For boxing historians, those final years are often little more than statistics, but one of the old Archie's last great fights became the story of his entire life in miniature. 3 days before his 43rd birthday, the old champion arrived on foreign soil to defend his undisputed title against 29-year-old Canadian contender Yvon Durelle. Archie had been through too much in life to be shaken by doubt, but sometimes life asks the same question over and over again.
Come storming in, Archie Moore, early in the fight. If he were to
Some victories leave a championship belt around your waist. Others make your name legendary. And then there are victories that reveal who you truly are.
He is out. Man, oh man, what a dramatic turn in this fight. Archie Moore near annihilation in the first round.
Many consider it the greatest light heavyweight fight ever, and the greatest comeback in boxing history. Naturally, the promoters couldn't resist a rematch, but the second fight was little more than a formality. Old Archie stopped the younger Durelle in just 3 rounds. Moore spent 10 years as a world champion, 9.5 of them as the undisputed champion. In the early 1960s, he lost a non-title decision to Giulio Rinaldi. A year later, they met again for the New York State Athletic Commission world titles, and Archie avenged the defeat, successfully defending his championship. Before the fight, an unexpected visitor arrived at Old Archie's training camp, Rocky Marciano himself. After watching his former rival prepare, he said, "I don't believe Rinaldi can lose. The weight cut will finish Archie." Concerned that their biggest attraction might collapse from exhaustion or fail to make weight, the promoters invited Harold Johnson to serve as a standby. When Moore heard about it, he smiled and said, "Hasn't Harold always stood by?"
They're saying that you're having a little trouble getting your weight down to fight back in that class again. Just wondered what your opinion was of that.
Well, Bert, I haven't had too much trouble in taking off weight, you know. I certainly know how to take it off when the time is ripe and when the money is available that would encourage me to do these things.
There's been some talk about the reason you postponed your last couple of fights was because you couldn't get down in that weight limit. Is that true?
No, it was because the promotion didn't get up the money, you know, that I wanted to defend the title for. And I'm a professional fighter, and I don't fight, you know, unless I get paid.
Archie made the weight, then outboxed Rinaldi over 15 rounds. "I knew he'd make it," Harold Jackson later joked. "Archie wasn't going to let me have all that money." Even in the 1960s, Old Archie was still competing at a high level. He fought future world champion Willie Pastrano to a draw. Gradually, the veteran became as much of a teacher as a fighter. He took on a gifted and equally outspoken young Cassius Clay. But if Archie taught him anything, it certainly wasn't humility. Their partnership didn't last long. A few years later, mentor and student met in the ring. It was a hopeless mismatch. Old Archie was 46, and perhaps even 49, while Cassius was only 20. It was Moore's second-to-last fight. One final victory followed before he walked away from the ring for good. Later, Archie became a respected trainer. He coached Nigeria's Olympic boxing team, worked with the team that helped develop Big George Foreman, and trained one of boxing's most feared punchers, Ernie Shavers. Elements of Moore's defense and technique lived on through masters like Ken Norton, Montel Griffin, and Evander Holyfield. But Bernard Hopkins inherited more than just his ring craft. He embraced the same mindset, the same respect for the craft, and the same understanding of how to extend a career in defiance of time itself. But more than his championship belts, or even the future stars he trained, Archie took the greatest pride in his ABC program, Any Boy Can. It was a refuge for children who, like him years earlier, faced a world where the streets offered more temptations than opportunities. When the International Boxing Hall of Fame opened its doors in 1990, Archie Moore was among its inaugural inductees. In Canastota, he took his place alongside Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Sugar Ray Robinson, and other legends. Archie Moore passed away in December 1998. Over 28 years in the ring, he fought 220 times, won 186 bouts, defeated 7 Hall of Famers, and scored an astonishing 132 knockouts. He waited 17 and a half years for his first world title shot. Then, he ruled the light heavyweight division for a decade, at an age when most fighters are watching from ringside. The sport has changed beyond recognition. The boxing in which Archie Moore set his records no longer exists, and with it disappears the path to ever surpass them. But the numbers tell only part of the story. Modern boxing has become an assembly line for champions. We often call them legends, usually out of respect. Archie Moore was a legend in the truest sense of the word. The Old Mongoose belonged to a vanished breed of fighters, one that modern boxing can no longer produce.